Hi, good morning, or whatever it is time that you're seeing us. Today we're continuing our episodes about the Bible, and we have a few questions today. One from Johnny: When was the Bible written? Maggie: When was the Bible first created? And then from Gabe: How many days was it when they finished writing the Bible? And so those questions are kind of detailed, and we'll go into them kind of part by part. So let's look at the first one. So when was the Bible written? So, the Bible that we have today, right? Here's my study Bible here. Tim has his, and Tim collects, if Tim ever finds a Bible that he doesn't have, he makes sure he picks that one up too. Most Bibles that we're familiar with have, 66 books, the 39 books in the Old Testament, 27 from the New Testament. I think we've talked before, there's some books, like in the Apocrypha, it's called, that basically cover the time in between the Old and New Testaments, that some church bodies have in their Bible and some don't. And now inside the Bible isn't just one singular book. Moses, most Orthodox Christians would say that, and Orthodox meaning kind of traditional, following along with the regular beliefs the church has held throughout time. Most Christians would say that that Moses is the writer of like Genesis and Exodus, Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, and Moses is alive, we would say, around 1400 BC. So Moses is writing the first books of the Bible about that time. Of course, Genesis takes place earlier, but through God's inspiration, he's able to write, God uses Moses to write it. And then we have, the John writing the book of Revelation, probably sometime around 90 AD or so, somewhere in there. So you have, almost 1500 years between when you have the first book of the Bible being written and to the end. So it's not like God sat down with the human authors and they wrote it all at once, but it's a big process because God's love story to his people has been a process with lots of events that happen in it.
My email is correctchristian8090 @gmail.com, because that's the time when I feel that people started figuring out that we need to defend the faith. We need to put these things in writing, or make sure the writings are compiled into a Bible, bibliography. And that's about the time when the Christian church itself, the Christian community, started realizing that there were people within its ranks that were doing some silly things. There were new teachings, or like, Jesus really wasn't a human. He was like some I don't know, some spiritual being that looked like a human. And so they started compiling these teachings. The apostles who were still alive, and the disciples of the apostles, who were certainly still alive, were like, no, 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 no. This is what it was all about. And they compiled everything that way. So that's how we got the New Testament, was because they started writing to other Christians about what was right and what was wrong. I think, like I was talking before we started the recording about James, when you read the letter of James, you can see exactly, what I'm talking about. James is writing to a church at an address, saying, "Hey, how you guys doing?" And I was going to write to say, Christmas is around the corner, whatever. But I noticed that there's a bunch of people in the church who are doing some silly things, and you need to call them out on it. And he lists it in that book of James. It's absolutely incredible to think that Christians were writing to Christians about Christianity. The New Testament is not necessarily written to non-believers. It's written to believers to know what is right and what is wrong, and what we call orthodox. What is substantially factual. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating compilation of letters that we now call the New Testament, or the Bible.
And when it comes to, what was put in the New Testament and what wasn't, sometimes, if you watch a History Channel documentary, or maybe a National Geographic documentary, they might be, oh, there are these books that have been left out, that Christians, were sneaky and they put this so that way Christians would believe a certain thing. And that's not true. The reason that we have the books of the New Testament is, those writings were from people who were right there with Jesus, or just a degree or two away from that. So, Matthew was a disciple, Mark, he, probably with Jesus, he wasn't a disciple, but he spent a lot of time with Peter, some time with Paul. Luke spent a lot of time with Paul and interviewed Mary and other eyewitnesses probably. And then John, of course, his disciple. Um, and then with the letters, they're written by Paul or Peter or John. James and Jude are brothers of Jesus, probably. Other kids from Mary and Joseph who became important in the church. And Revelation is by John. So very early, the church fathers are like, hey, these are important. And one of the reasons we don't see Bibles show up in a book form right away in Christian history is, I think there's kind of two main reasons. One is that they didn't use books the way we do today. You would have scrolls and letters and stuff, and you would kind of keep a collection of those, but it wouldn't be bound in a book form like it is common for us today. And also, the second reason is that Christianity was persecuted for a lot in the early church.
Yeah, I was going to point out that the Christian church was different from the world around it. It's almost identical to today in 2021, in December of 2021. The church in the first centuries, or the first years of the church, were exactly in the same kind of world. The Roman world and the United States of America world, almost identical. Almost, I mean, it's eerie how similar they are. Now, I was noticing, Johnny, when you say when was the Bible written, I think the better way of thinking about the New Testament was when was the New Testament put together in a book form, because there are a bunch of different letters written from different people about different issues that all align with each other. There's not one that contradicts each other, but they were all put together. When were they put together? In a little booklet that we have chapters and sentences and those kind of things all put together. That would be the best way of thinking about when was the Bible written. It was written as letters from one person to another. So it'd be like you writing to a bunch of your classmates, and you wanted to keep all those letters because they were really profound about what was going on in the class and what the teacher was teaching and how to understand the subjects you're being taught. So then you said, well, you know what? Rather than just have all these letters written all over the place, let's get together and put these letters together in like a little booklet so that next year's class will know what's going on in this particular subject. That's how it was done. It was put together so that the Christians of the time would know what was going on, and they would know what was right and what was wrong.
Yeah, and those letters were clearly copied and shared, faithfully copied and shared. And the reason we don't have always the exact, we don't have the first copy of the letter Paul wrote to the Corinthians, because it was probably passed around and read so much. They probably literally read them to pieces. And of course, copied them before they fell apart. So what Paul had written to them would be shared. Now, some of the earliest things that we have were like a whole volume of the Old New Testament all put together in a book form. There's the Codex Vaticanus, and let's see, Vaticanus, and the Codex Sinaiticus. Codex Sinaiticus is found in Sinai in Israel. There's a monastery in the Sinai Peninsula close to what some believe is the mountain where Moses received the Ten Commandments, and that's where it's preserved there. And these were written, put together probably around 300 A.D., about the time of Constantine, where you have Christianity becoming legal in the Roman Empire, and you do see more books kind of started.
Of the thousands and thousands and thousands of manuscripts and of copies of the New Testament that we have that date back 14, 15, 1600 years, none of them contradict any of the core beliefs of Christianity. So those writings weren't, it's not like when I was an atheist and I was an idiot, I would say, well, it's like the telephone game. You tell somebody that there were 47 boxes put on a big red truck who went to Cleveland at 3:00 in the afternoon. Then from Cleveland, they drove to Maine, to Portland, Maine, and then dropped off the 33 books, the 33 boxes. Well, then you tell it to 25 people, you whisper in their ear, and by the time it gets back to the last person,
You're lucky if there's a
it
truck
was
at all.
it was a train that had, you know, ducks on it, and the ducks were green, and they went to Canada. That's not how Christians thought of the resurrected Christ and salvation in the name of Jesus. This is serious stuff. This is not just goofy the telephone game. I mean, atheists or enemies of the church will always try and say, well, it got changed over the years because that's what always happens when you. No. These are people who said Jesus was alive. He had apostles. He preached the gospel. He was executed by the Roman authorities. In 3 days, he came back to life. He came back to life as he promised. I mean, this is very serious. These are very serious. Even when you have anti and non-religious, you know, like I'm not going to mention other religions, but other religions that we know about. They're very serious about making sure that you know what they believe in. So we don't look at non-Christian religions and say, well, that's just that all that writing was just made up as they went along. No, they have a story. And wrong. I mean, they in my belief in what I've seen and through my old life, Christianity is true because Christianity is reality. Christianity is true because the calendar backs up the Christian faith. And we don't use the word faith as in I hope it's right. We use faith as in trust. Everything that you learn, everything that you sit on, everything that you lean on, everything you write with, everything that you drive in was given to us on authority. When we get in our cars and we drive home, we have people who built that car and they had authority to make the brakes correct, to make the drivetrain right, to have the lights come on, to have the doors shut correctly. We believe in what we believe in on authority. And that authority is from people who came before us that you can trust. You can certainly trust the writers of the New Testament.
They were handpicked by Jesus. And if these writers are handpicked by Jesus, of course we can trust them. So then, Gabe, so Maggie, that's the first times we see a Bible, like we said, is around the 300s. And then, Gabe, how many days when they finished writing the Bible? Well, you know, around 1,500 years or so from the first time, Moses probably wrote something down to when John finishes Revelation is how long it takes the whole thing to be written. But Luther translates, let's see, the New Testament translated in a few months, and I forget how long it took him to translate to the Old Testament, but he translated it pretty quickly. So compiling it doesn't take as long after it's already been written and put together.
Mm-hmm. And our third question from Gabe.
Yeah, how many days was it when they finished writing the Bible? And that was Moses starting, 1400 BC to John finishing at 90 AD or so.
I gotta say, Gabe, you stumped me on that one. That's a question I've never even heard before, or even thought of. How many days? I mean, it would be tens of thousands of days, I guess. Thousands of years times 100 is probably tens of thousands. So it took a long time for people to put what we have now, what we call the Bible, is actually two Bibles. It's the Old Testament, or what I said before, the Tanakh is how people that practice Judaism call their Old Testament. It means the law, the writing, and the prophets, or the law, the prophet, and the writings. They put those acronyms together and call it the Tanakh, or they certainly don't call it the Old Testament, because to them it's just their Bible.
Yeah, they don't have a New Testament.
They don't have the New Testament. Now, before we leave, please, a lot of this stuff is things that you should ask your parents and you to sit down and look up. It is absolutely incredibly fun to do. To verify the faith of Christianity is an absolute gift that we have from God to us right now.
Absolutely. All right, thanks for watching this, and I think we're on to questions about the Old Testament next time. We'll see you later, guys.